Executive leadership is not about a title or designation. It is about the impact, the inspiration, and the influence one has on others, which is why, for many, executive leadership is a career long goal. But being an executive leader isn't just about glamour and reclining in first class as they fly around the world. It is about making tough decisions, working long hours, and handling colossal responsibility and accountability. It may seem it takes a superhuman with boundless energy to undertake these jobs, but these leaders are still humans trying to do something extremely challenging while also attempting to strike some balance in their lives. The higher up the ladder you are, the tougher your balancing act becomes. And one such leader is our guest today. Harvinder Singh, with a professional journey of about 20 years, mostly working in the airline sector, is now the country director for United Airlines for all of India and a meditation practitioner for about 15 years. So without further ado, let's welcome him on the show. Hi Harvinder, how are you?
Hi, Monica. Very well. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for making time for us and talking to the listeners today. So, Harvinder, every guest that has been on the show has been a long standing meditator, which means that they started meditating when meditation wasn't as cool and trendy a thing to do as it is today. And if anything, there were more doubts about it back then. And for that reason, the story of every guest on this show is interesting and unique. So we would love to hear your story about getting introduced to meditation with any instances that you'd like to specifically highlight.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I can completely relate to what you say. There's always a little bit of a doubt in terms of when you really want to start something new. And for me, actually, this journey of doubt was longer than probably many people because my wife actually got into this meditation much before me. So I've been practicing this for last about 15 years, as you rightly said. And my wife has been, practicing Sahaj Yoga meditation for about 18 years. So it took her about 3 years to kind of convinced me and said, you should get into this meditation, but I was taking my own sweet time. And, everybody has got some sort of reservation saying that, this is maybe not for me. And, you have those conditionings in your mind many times. So, but what really happened is, Monica, that my son, who was very young at that time, he was, I think, just about 1 year, no, 2 years old. And he suddenly was diagnosed with leukemia, and he was so he had some issues earlier, and we were kind of getting his tests done, and he was suddenly diagnosed with leukemia, and we had to go through various tests, and then doctors almost kind of gave up and said, he's very weak, very young, we cannot go through any kind of procedure with him for him to recover. So it could be a difficult journey for you, not knowing what could be the end of it. And then I did all I could as a human being, whatever you can. And I sent those reports to my brother, who was in Melbourne. By the way, he's also practicing this meditation now. And his good friend is a doctor with Royal Melbourne Hospital. So he saw the reports and he said uh, to my brother, and my brother then told me that it doesn't really look good. And so my wife, I was fairly shaken about the entire thing. My wife, I think, took about 20 minutes to kind of gain back her balance. And she said, I think it's a reason for you to get into this meditation. I was not really happy about the entire thing. I said, it's what I'm going through as a father. And then you bringing up this issue of topic of meditation at this time. And then when I was left with nothing, I had to kind of said, okay, I'll do it. And then let's see what happens. And we actually also went to a doctor who's practicing this meditation. He's actually a homeopathic doctor in India, in Delhi. He told me the same thing. He said, I can start the treatment, but if you get into this meditation, it'll help. So I was kind of cornered at that time. And then I started actually this meditation. And you won't believe, Monica, rest is a history. My wife was doing this, I was doing it. And together we actually started, in this meditation, you feel those vibrations in hand, as we call it, the cool breeze. We started practicing it together, and my wife was doing it anyway, but I started doing it. And then we, kind of included my son in that. He was too young to do it, but passing on the vibrations to him and all those things. And he recovered within a span of 3 months. And then we did a follow-up report after that, after 6 months, and he was absolutely fine. He's now almost 17, taller than me and doing very well in school. But after that, we sent that report. The same doctor in Melbourne, he couldn't believe that it is the report of the same child. So he said, I can't believe that. And after that, doctor himself, the friend of my brother, is also actually getting into has gotten into this meditation as well. So that's how my journey started. And when you go through these kind of things, your faith becomes, it solidifies over a period of time, and that's how it started overall for me.
That's such an amazing story. And unfortunately, sometimes this is what happens when all is going well. We don't want to make time for such things. At times, we don't even want to hear about them. But sometimes, it just comes to that point in life where you just want to hold on to anything that you can get a grip on to stay afloat. But then it was you and your wife who were meditating, and then your son benefited. So, what could be seen as a correlation there, one might ask?
So I think there is no other way. I mean, because we didn't do the usual course of treatment or nothing of that sort. And I think over a period of time, his situation was, whilst I was taking my own time and I was consulting many other people. There's a long story, so I just kind of briefed it for you. But whilst I was, we were going through various other options. We were talking to various other doctors. The situation was deteriorating, and you cannot go through things like chemotherapy and stuff like that with a child who's weak and who's just 2 or 3 years old. So you are left with very limited options, or actually no option to do anything. So I was kind of mentally prepared that maybe he's got a very short life of 6 months or 1 year, and let me just do the best whatever I can for him to see the life whatever he can. So I was actually at that mental state and accepting that fact when this happened to me. And I think when I started practicing it, I won't say I was really deep into it, but it was just a start for me. But maybe it was a way for me to kind of get into deeper, and then the change started happening within a period of, I think, what we really started noticing was about in a week or so. And then after that, things only went towards the positive side, and you won't believe in 3 months it was completely gone. So there is no other way. And then this was the first, let's say, my first rendezvous with this meditation and how things changed for me, or my first experience. And then the rest is all about, the more I was practicing it in my personal life and my professional life, things just turned around completely for me. So that's how my journey is.
Wow, wonderful. And I would say highly commendable is your wife's response and the stable witness state to all of that happening. And this is something definitely, beyond a normal human response, which I think she gained probably from her journey in meditation.
Absolutely. She was, I mean, usually mothers are more panicky and fathers are strong. It was the other. And she said, no, you have to get into it. This is probably the reason for you to get into it. And I said, this can't be. But that was the reason.
Right. Wow. Such a commendable response for the situation that she was in, and especially for the role that she was in. Like you said, she was the mother. So, such an amazing story, Harvinder. And thank you so much for sharing it with us. And now, from what we understand, when you are in as responsible a position as you are in, it takes a very different kind of skill set, a great deal of strategic planning and execution to stay aligned with the company's vision. But tell us exactly, what does being a country director mean, and what are the kind of responsibilities or pressures that this position entails?
Well, so my job, the primary, my responsibility is to actually look after the commercial business of United Airlines in India. And as we've been in India for many years now, and my objective is always to make sure that the commercial business grows. We expand our footprint in the country. We are able to localize and able to adapt to the country in terms of the whatever the head office policies are, and do that on at a country level. And of course, I have a great team who is supporting me on that. But the usual challenges are your tough business environment. You have to be able to empathize well with your customer, which is your external stakeholder, and the internal stakeholders, which is your team, and to be able to balance that well. At the same time, you have to be leading the entire thing very objectively to make sure that you're achieving your goals. You have to maneuver the environment of competition, which is very high nowadays, and being a multinational, to be able to manage business in the local regulatory environment, which sometimes can also be challenging because the expectations from The multinationals are sometimes different, and you should be able to manage that well. So I think all in all, to be able to balance these things, to be leading in a very objective way and making sure that you reach your goals that you set out for the country, it is challenging. Sometimes there are challenges which are difficult to maneuver, whether it's on the competition side or internal. But I think that's a part of the job, and you have to do your best to make sure that you do that.
Right. And you know what? Sometimes I think that when you are at those levels of leadership, another challenge that comes, I guess, is that instead of giving you an honest appraisal of any situation, subordinates may tend to tell you what they think you want to hear, which makes decision making at that levels all the more difficult.
I agree with you, and that's why actually I use the word empathy, and it's a very sometimes it becomes very vague because you can't really understand what's really going on. And, you have different teams. So I have a marketing team, I have a sales team, I have a reservation team, and so on and so forth. And they, of course, are living in their own world. So for every single person or every single team, their job is more important than anybody else, and rightly so. They have to give their best to what they're doing. But you as a leader should be able to understand, make sure that clutter is out and you get the right messages and are able to implement the right things with the right people so that they stay motivated. At the same time, you are able to achieve your objective. So that is a balancing act that one has to play, and I believe I'm just a facilitator, because they are the real people who do the job. But my job is to make sure that I provide them with all the resources, and are able to manage their expectations. At the same time, my boss's expectations, who are there, who want the country to go in a certain way, and to be able to lead that.
Definitely, that's great leadership skills over there. And another interesting thing that I came across was this book. I mean, I didn't get to read the entire book, but quite interesting is the fact that the author, Steve Tappan, he teamed up with a neuroscientist to run physiological and neurological tests on CEOs for a book that he wrote, The Secrets of CEOs. And what they found was that many business leaders were stressed out, overworked, and exhausted from their immensely important responsibilities, insane work hours, and constant travel. And the author, he shared that about 90% of those 150 leaders that he'd talked to for his book privately acknowledged that they struggle to have a good work life balance. And he also shared with the CNN that the major emotion these leaders experienced were those of frustration and overwhelm. And it is said that if you have those emotions for 80% of the day, it leads to elevated cortisol in the body, which leads to accelerated aging and health issues. And we all know the story from there on. So, how has your meditation routine been helpful to you in shouldering this immense responsibility and striking a work life balance?
I think it's sometimes it's easier said than done. At a given moment of time, things do take over. They dominate your mind space a lot. And I think it used to happen to me a lot as well. Because, as I said, at any given point of time, there is one thing which is more important. There is one set of people which are more important. And sometimes you get consumed with these things in day to day issues. And the worst part is when one part is affecting the other. So sometimes your work is affecting your private life. Your private life is kind of overpowering your work life, and you're not able to kind of differentiate. I mean, you're able to differentiate, but you're not able to kind of make those decisions effectively because your mind is not at the right place. You feel consumed in one area, and then you're not able to do justice to the other one. So I think since I started doing this meditation, it gave me a lot of clarity of mind. I was able to understand, and it was a gradual process. It's not an overnight process. It's a living process. The more you do it, the more often you do it, it starts happening. You keep finding that clarity within inside you. And I think the important thing that started happening to me, which is still a work in progress, is you get into something, you're able to do that objectively, and then you're able to bounce back quickly, come back to your own kind of, it's an anchor inside you that pulls you back, saying that, okay, this is only a slot, this is a part of the job you have done, don't get consumed, come back. And then you're again able to balance, you're able to kind of bring your mind back to your anchor, and then get to the other part. And then the best part is, then I don't carry all of this, I try not to, and I think this meditation is really helping me. It is not affecting my life at home at all. So it becomes even more important today when you're working from home, because sometimes it becomes very difficult to differentiate, because your laptop is open all the time, you are on calls, all the video calls and everything else. And then, the time is no factor now. I mean, you're just in a company like us. I'm working in India, so there's Indian hours, and then my boss and some other people are sitting in Europe, so I have to look at afternoon, doing those calls. And then of course it's a US based company, so I'm kind of on calls till about 8:30 or 9 in the evening. So this, all those things, I need to be able to kind of bounce back and to be able to retain your mental balance really helps. This meditation really helps, and that's how I think the work life balance comes into being. Usually, when you talk to people, they always say it's a time. So 9 to 5 you're working, and after 5 you're at home. That's not the truth nowadays. It's all about here. It's all about mental balance, and if you're able to manage that, I think it goes well.
Really well put. And it's all happening in the head. And when there are no other boundaries, the boundaries need to be defined in the head. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you would know. I know you're a professional, and I think you give many hours to your work, so I can understand. I'm sure you can understand that part.
So, Harvinder, now we all know that the airlines industry is a highly complex, dynamic, and competitive, and particularly vulnerable to exogenous events which can drastically affect operations. And we all got to see that just recently with the pandemic, where airlines was one of the hardest hit industries, which meant not just job insecurities, but also maybe, increased workload due to emergency operations, increased exposure to infection due to contact with infected passengers, surfaces on the flight deck, in the cabin, at the airport. And this is just one example, but share with us any challenges that are unique to employees of this industry where you find a meditation can be helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And I think first challenge, as you rightly said, it is an industry where most of us, or especially the people who are actually in the customer facing areas, are exposed the most. So that part is happening now, but before that happened, when the pandemic kind of hit us, there was no flying for a long time. So almost like 90% of the business was more than 90% business. There was no business at all. The planes were not flying. And obviously, many people in the industry, in the aviation, whether it's aviation or the aviation related industry, whether it's tourism, they lost their jobs. And somehow this area of business is so sensitive that anything that happens around the world. So this is COVID now. There was SARS many years back. In US 9/11 happened. The worst. Whenever these kind of things happen, the first industry to be affected is aviation, tourism, and probably I would say the stock market, the financial industry, so to say. And everybody has to take a hit, whether it's personally or professionally. So that happened, and obviously then when that happens to you as a person, you're affected. You lose your mental balance. You don't know how the future looks like. And many of my colleagues, many of my friends in the industry are still going through that stage. And some people have taken salary cuts and stuff like that. So that is the one part of the story, what is happening now otherwise in the environment. But the other side is the nature of the job itself. So as I said, it's a customer facing industry. You need to be at your best when it comes to the service level. Not just when you're facing the customer, even when my team in sales reservations, they're handling customer calls, they're meeting people all the time. And I think there's a certain amount of expectation from the customers in terms of how you behave in this industry. So I'm actually on the road a lot of times meeting customers in and around daily, and I'm traveling a lot within India as well because we have flights from all over India. And so those challenges definitely play a part. And to do your best, to look your best, you need to be balanced from inside. And I think sometimes, as they say, even if you're not happy on a phone call, it'll reflect in your voice, in your sound, it'll reflect that you're not happy. So unless you're really happy and balanced from inside, it won't come out. And somehow it'll reflect in your quality of work, your conversations, whatever you're doing as a day to day. And I think again, this meditation. And I was fortunate enough, actually, I've been able to conduct a couple of sessions in my company and the company I was working earlier. And few people are continuing to do this, not everybody. And they have seen a marked change and they say, okay, we feel much more balanced. When we confront people, when we are facing customers in tough situation, we are able to manage ourselves much better to handle that situation. So I would just say it's. I know there are many other jobs which are difficult, but airline has got its own challenges. And I'm like me and many of my friends and colleagues. I think it can really help this meditation for you to stay balanced inside, to be able to reflect that outside, I would say.
Very rightly said. And our voice, our tone, our gestures are all a reflection of what we carry inside. And if you are customer facing, you've got to have your interactions done well.
Yeah.
So now, there are different jobs within airlines, each with its own set of challenges, but the stress levels of pilots are a growing concern, and pilots are exposed to understandably difficult working conditions that may be related to their scheduling, exposure to sounds from the engine, consistent radio communication, varying circadian rhythms, and these are just to name a few. But mental health in aviation is a major concern among airlines, regulators, and passengers. And this topic, I think, gained more interest after the 2015 German wings crash. And experts and airlines have been aware of these issues from as early as 1985. And we do know that they are trying to do their best, which is why, they administer personality tests during the selection process and have more and more regular screenings. But at the same time, it has also been suggested that this will not be foolproof in eliminating mental health issues. So, did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a pilot myself, but I have many friends in the industry who are actually flying who as pilots. And apart from the issues that you mentioned, of course, I think this job itself is a very tough job because what you are there's a lot at stake. And I think even when the things are fine, there's a sense of anxiety all the time running in your mind because things can go in the wrong direction anytime, and you need to be very alert to it and to be able to take those decisions on the spot in the adverse conditions, and on the basis of those decisions that you take last moment, there's the lives of about, I don't know, 200, 300 people sitting at the back depend. So you're all the time conscious of that, and not every flight goes, if it has to face any critical issues or whatever it is. But as a pilot, you need to be mindful of that fact that I have to be ready for this one. So this causes a lot of anxiety in many people, many pilots. I know from my friends. The other part is in the long haul flights, especially like ours, from India to US, you are on in different time zones all the time. You need to be able to acclimatize yourself to different time zones. At the same time, stay alert for the next flight. And again, the same cycle of anxiety, same rescheduling, same planning of the flight, to be able to manage that part. And so I think this job comes with its own challenges, and to be to stay at that level of anxiety all the time, I believe it is a very difficult job. I have seen people really kind of burning out in a period of few years, and say this is it, and we can't do it for a longer period. Some people are more resilient than others, but many people are actually, have seen that they feel after a while they feel this is very, very tough for them to continue because you're always at that state of anxiety. So yeah, it definitely comes with its own challenges. And I think with the meditation, Sahaj Yoga meditation that we do is definitely helping with the anxiety part. So uh, it's a system inside, and there is a kundalini inside us, which is the power. And maybe we don't have enough time for us to really go into deep into how it really works, but it is your inner power, which is a tangible thing. The experience is so tangible that you can feel the experience while you're doing this meditation, and it brings that anxiety level down, not just for the pilots but everybody else. But looking at the criticality of the work that is there as a pilot, I'm sure it can help many. And actually, a couple of my friends I know who are in this profession as pilots, they are doing this meditation, and they see a tangible result in terms of for them to be able to manage that anxiety well. But again, I think it's a living process. If somebody says that I start doing it now, tomorrow I feel a different person. You might, but it also can take its own time. So if one needs a little bit of more, give it more time and start practicing it for a week or so to be able to see the real effects, I would say.
And unfortunately, mental illness is second only to cardiovascular disease in reasons for losing an aviation license. And I guess it becomes just more complicated if pilots withhold this information from their doctors or the governing body of aviation due to the fear of losing their license. And from what you shared, it sounds like the conditions of pilots are of being in a sympathetic mode most of the time. And what you shared about the Kundalini seems as a chance for the parasympathetic to soothe down all exhaustions arising due to being in a sympathetic mode. But you rightly said we have to dedicate ourselves to anything, be it any skill, any craft that we are trying to get adept at, and it's not instant gratification. And Harvinder, I know you've been volunteering to share this knowledge of meditation with others by conducting workshops for educational institutions, corporate houses, NGOs as your personal contribution to society. So, what is any one big message that you share with whoever you share this knowledge with or with anyone listening to you right now?
Okay, I think the most important thing, first of all, I really want to say that people are ready for it. And when I talk to various institutions, whether it's educational institutions or corporate houses or NGOs, as you rightly said, people have the times are so tough. Overall, as a society, what people are facing, and also individually, I have met so many people who are actually sick and tired of going through various things in life. And trust me, when I was actually, I was there was a certain resistance when I was accepting Sahaj Yoga meditation. But before that, there was a lot of seeking which was inside me, and I tried various things. And I was not finding that balance and happiness inside, and that also kind of put me off to a certain extent that nothing really works. That was also one of the reasons that I was not accepting Sahaj Yoga as meditation, not being able to really comprehend what it can do for you. So, I my message would be that do give it a try. I know people do various things, and sometimes things don't work, and then you're not able to kind of differentiate between what is truth and what is not truth. But this can be as tangible as it is possible. It is really working on your system. You can feel the vibrations. Shimata ji, who started this meditation, she worked on it on people so effectively, and she's been traveling around the world doing all this. And I think we should be able to do our part, volunteer wherever we can. But my only submission is do try, talk to everybody wherever there's a possibility, and people are ready to embrace something which is really truth. And don't gauge it by the numbers. Don't say that I did this for 100 people and only two kind of accepted. It's all fine. It's all fine. It's I think spiritual journey is everybody's individual journey, and everybody will take their own time. But people who are really looking for the truth, I'm sure many are ready to accept it and embrace it.
Thanks for sharing that message, Harvinder, with the audience and encouraging them to disregard any previous failed experience they may have had, any preconceived ideas or notions they may have. And thank you so much for your time today. And it was really, really wonderful talking to you. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
It was a complete pleasure, and I really appreciate you inviting me for this. Thank
Thank
you.
you.